Will Wade stepped to the mic and put the ACC on notice on Tuesday, but today we're talking what are realistic expectations?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Thursday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we're still reeling off of these Will Wade clips. They're probably going to live for a very long time. I was looking for just a couple taglines. I think he gave me about 17, not actually, but that's so many great one-liners, and we're only scratching the surface with Will Wade. But one of the things that obviously stuck out from his presser, he told everyone that NC State is going to be looking to be in the top 4 to 5 in the conference, and they're going to the NCAA tournament in year one of his time in Raleigh. Where do you see realistic expectations in terms of what actually to expect? Because it is year one. He's going to have to rebuild this entire roster. He's still in the process of assembling a staff. Where do you actually think the Wolfpack may end up in year one?
I think Will Wade said what he said and he meant what he meant. And I think that's actually very realistic.
Oh, yeah.
If we're looking at college basketball, who came first in the ACC this year, right? Duke. Who was second?
Was it Louisville?
Who played Duke in the ACC championship?
Louisville.
Okay. What was Louisville doing at this time last year?
The same thing we're doing right now, reconfiguring their entire program.
Well, Louisville probably had their cupboards were probably left full, right? Kenny Payne probably did a great job there to the point where Kenny Payne went off to the sunset very ceremoniously, correct?
A sunset is one way to put it. No, the cupboards were barren and their program was decimated.
So if Kelsey can turn that program around to not just a top 4 seed in the conference and make the NCAA tournament, if he can turn them into a a top dog in the conference, a team that made it to the ACC championship in 1 year, why would I not believe Will Wade can do less than that? Even on a professional level, I'm a Pistons fan. J.B. Biggerstaff just made the Pistons the first ever team to triple their win count in one season. And you think that I'm not believing Will Wade when he says, I'm going to make this team a top 4 team? That's not even unattainable. I would be like, hey, you got a lot of dip on your chip if he said, we're going to be the number 1 team in the ACC by a mile. Whatever Shire and them thinks he's cooking over there, I'm going to show y'all what a real chef looks like in the head coaching box. I'm going, hold on now, brother. Hold on. I believe in you. And when you get a little experience under your belt in this thing, but year one, that's a little bit. But, as saying top 4, to me, not a ridiculous ask at all, because when we look at the top 4, you look at Duke. Were they good last year or were they bad last year? They were pretty good last year. You look at Louisville. Were they good last year or were they bad last year? God awful. You look at Clemson. Clemson was pretty good last year. And then you look at Wake Forest. Objectively, mid. Very Wake Foresty with all due respect. So you look at that situation and you're saying half of the top 4 in ACC last year were meant to God awful throw this program into the sun and rebuild it from scratch. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not really sitting here saying Will Wade just bit off a really big bite. No, he took on a regular bite. This is a completely normal chew from a really amazing coach.
Yeah, you beat me to it because I think it's been interesting to watch how people have reacted to him saying that. NC State finishing in the top 4 to 5 and making the NCAA tournament, that's not crazy. And in fact, the majority of this fan base, they believe that should be the standard, like the standard, regardless of whoever is the coach. This program used to be extremely proud of their history in the 70s and 80s, and we kind of fell off from that. Making the NCAA tournament and getting hopefully a double bye in the ACC tournament, that should be your goal at bare minimum every single year. So for Will Wade to step to the mic and kind of announce that was going to be what we were going to do next year, it's really not that crazy at all. And I think Kenton laid that out beautifully in talking about Louisville. Louisville had to completely redo their roster because Kenny Payne left them in a nuclear waste zone. They were awful. Like last place in the ACC. Where on earth do we go from here? Awful.
Never won back-to-back games in the ACC under Kenny Payne. Not one time did they win 2 straight ACC games.
And immediately out of that, they hire Pat Kelsey, which is a great hire, and they finished second in the entire conference, and they played for the ACC tournament championship in just 1 year. And there's a lot of talk about how college sports are very year-to-year now. They're very transactional, and that part is true, proven by teams like Louisville. It's not crazy like at all. In fact, it should be almost underselling it that Will Wade could potentially be a top 4 seed and make it to the NCAA tournament. And you might say, well, Will Wade's never had to deal with the ACC before. He's been at relatively lower level schools, and he was at LSU. So I'll tell you, and this is also kind of skewed because over half of this was not during the NIL and transfer portal era. So keep that in mind. But his first year at Chattanooga, they were 18-15 overall, and they finished second in the SoCon. Keep in mind, this is his first year ever being a head coach, second in the conference, okay? He moves on to VCU 2 years later, finished tied for first in the A-10. His first year at VCU, tied for first. That's an immediate turnaround. Then he goes to LSU. Now, this is a pretty big step. A-10 to the SEC is a different ball game. He finishes tied for ninth, but that next season, 2018-19 at LSU, first in the SEC. Then he goes to McNeese, obviously, wins the Southland Conference both years in blowout fashion. This is what he does. He goes to his next stop. He turns them around immediately. And that's exactly why he stepped up and announced to everyone, this is not going to take a lot of time. They have the resources they needed, probably and then some, because he sounded extremely impressed with what NC State has gathered up for him. He's ready to go. Once he gets his staff hired here in a couple weeks, you're going to start seeing some names fly around in the portal with connection to NC State. I've already seen a couple, but I'm really not reading into it too far quite yet. He's going to turn this thing around. It's not crazy at all to expect us to be in the top 4 to 5 and make the NCAA tournament. That should be the standard at NC State, and it is quite a shame that that's been lost along the way, but you've heard us talk about Will Wade now for 2 weeks. We have all the confidence in the world that this is the guy to follow through on this promise. This is the guy that backs it up everywhere he's been. And I understand that people are saying, well, we'll see what he does when they tip this thing off in November. I understand that because he does still have to deliver the actual results, but I'll also tell you this, he has delivered. Every single place that he's been, he has backed it up and then some. NC State is next on his checklist, and everything we know about Will Wade tells us he's going to get it done.
Hey, listen, the best predictor of future behaviors is the past. If everywhere else that Will Wade has gone, he's had success, what makes you think that Raleigh will be different? The rest of the league is shaking in their boots. They are shaking. They are quaking. They are terrified. They feel that ground rumbling. They feel it. They feel that giant coming back to life in real time. And I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to hear some fee-fi-fo fumming from Will Wade and this basketball team.
Y'all ever been camping and the sun starts to go over the mountain a little bit, starts to get a little chilly outside, all of a sudden it's dark, all you have your campfire, and you hear a howl. One howl? No, you hear multiple howls in the distance. That's what NC State's doing right now. Imagine Hubert Davis camping by a fireside. He hears howls in the distance. Oh, that's Will Wade. He's coming. He's coming to the triangle, and he's coming to raid your campsite. That's a horrible analogy, but I don't know. I lost where I was going there. Will Wade is coming. He is inevitable. He feels like Thanos at this point in time. NC State wants to be Thanos. You want to be inevitable. The pack will be back, and we are not to be messed with. Coming up next, we're getting into some more philosophies that Will Wade kind of hinted at during some media availability on Tuesday. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Thursday sponsor is Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder where the heck did all my money go? That's what I'm doing with Will Wade merch on the market. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy sometimes to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes to play. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending in just one place so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. For example, when you start using Monarch, you might just realize how much you're spending on food delivery. So in the future, you can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling on multiple apps, you can use Monarch to funnel all of your finances track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's Monarch like the butterfly, money like the money. monarchmoney.com using code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for 50% off of your first year only on Monarch Money. Middle portion of our Thursday show. Wanted to get into more of what Will Wade was talking about in the media availability session on Tuesday. He fielded a couple questions about, the philosophy of his program and the structure that will take place here in the coming weeks, how he's looking to use the portal and formulate a team year in and year out, and some of the things that stuck with me. One, I'll start here and talking about the transfer portal specifically. He said that overall, his goal is essentially to grab like 2 to 3 freshmen out of the high school ranks every year. One of those freshmen being a showstopper type of freshman. So think of like a TJ Warren type freshman or a Dennis Parker level of freshman. I don't like using that example, but you get what I'm getting at here. Like a high 4-star, possibly a 5-star type of freshman, a showstopper type of guy. And then he also wants like developmental freshmen that he can take from year to year, work on them developmentally, and hopefully they can give you something by their sophomore or junior years. And then on top of that, you want supplemental pieces from the portal. So you go out and grab the best possible portal gets you can have, and he wants to keep that as a system regularly. And that means retaining players from year to year. So not having to redo the entire roster, kind of like how Keats was doing it with like 6 to 7 new guys every single year. He's looking for a ballpark of like 3 to 4 new guys every year. And I think that's a good thing, although it is very year to year. But we talk a lot about culture and establishing a team culture, keeping the same guys together, growing together, playing together extensively. That stuff does matter. And I know Will Wade kind of has infamously said that culture is not a real thing in college basketball because it is year to year. I would push back on that. It is a real thing, and playing together matters. Keeping that same core of players together, it does matter. And I think that his system is going to reflect that. Your thoughts on this, Kenton?
I agree with everything he said there. And I also want to say, like, the same way that you said, hey, it was one of Keats' negatives that we were constantly in the state of like complete roster overhaul from year to year. Yep. One thing that anybody that pays attention to the Keats years has to give him credit for, he did bring in the showstoppers. He did.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part and the difference where I think Will Wade will be different is the showstoppers will be a little younger. Those showstoppers, he intentionally said, hey, these should be freshman showstoppers because you want to have them for 2, 3, even potentially 4 years, right? DJ Burns, absolute showstopper. How long we have him? 2 years?
2 years.
Or was it 3? Okay, 2 years. DJ Horn, absolute showstopper. How long do we have him? Don't get me wrong. It was the greatest cup of coffee that Raleigh's ever seen, but we had him in essence for a cup of coffee. Like, that's the reality. Again, that is not a discredit to DJ Horn. That's not a discredit to Coach Keats. That's actually a credit to both of those guys in saying, hey, y'all were together for this short of a time, but you accomplished something that amazing in that time. Terquavion Smith is the only freshman showstopper that I remember Keats bringing in. And again, that's why I'm saying credit to Keats, because that is one thing that he did well, but that should be the norm, is what Coach Wade is saying. That Will Wade is saying, hey, it should be the norm that we have the Terquavions of the world, that we have and I hate to bring back this era, but Godfrey did a hell of a job of it, bringing in the TJ Warrens of the world, the Cat Barbers of the world, bringing in that level of player to where it's like, hey, you can expect and believe that NC State is going to have a couple guys that from freshman year forward, they're going to be competing for all conference, and that's what Will Wade wants to bring back, a steady stream of freshman, homegrown NC State talent that are in that mode of, hey, you've got to see these guys year in, year out. They'll be associated with NC State. And then, like you said, having the other guys be other guys that are raised up in, hey, this is how Coach Wade does things. And either you roll with it or get rolled over. Having those guys be your supplemental pieces, that's how you build something special.
I think another stark difference you'll see between Wade and Keats is that the showstoppers that Wade gets will also make it to campus. And that was a big gripe with a lot of the Keats commitments. The biggest name guys we never even got to see play at State. And I always felt for Keats because I don't even think that was necessarily his fault. Guys like Jalen LeCue or Josh Hall just decided to weigh their options a little bit heavier and go into the NBA draft process where, I mean, in all reality, it didn't work out probably for the best. But I think Will Wade will get those guys committed. They'll stay committed, and then they'll make it to campus and play. I think that'll be a massive difference that you'll see between the two. And so I'm liking already what I'm hearing about the way he wants to structure his roster from year to year, because it screams stability to me. It screams not having to do a complete overhaul and just wipe the whiteboard clean every single year. That only adds additional tasks to accomplish that can take away sometimes from the bigger picture, which is coaching a winning product. So I'm liking what I'm hearing on that front. I also heard a couple comments about the use of a GM, and we've mentioned Andrew Slater, still unofficial, but that is rumored to be the guy coming with Will Wade to be the GM of State. That will be groundbreaking. So again, we'll save that for when it's official. I also heard that we may have potentially an assistant GM, which would be more of like the money guy, and Andrew Slater can focus on the player acquisition part of this. Kenta, what are your thoughts about having a GM and an assistant GM in conjunction with Will Wade?
You know, there's a certain point where you have too many people managing too many different things, where it's too many people managing too many finite details. We're nowhere near that point. I don't think a GM and an assistant GM is like, okay, but what will the assistant GM even do? I think that there's definitely a role and a place for that guy to say, hey, you talk to this player. He said he wants $400K a year in NIL, and this player says that, you know, he's going to need at least 300. We cannot get both of these guys. We have to make a tough decision. Who do we want to invest who do we want to invest more time and resources into? Because even if we can't get both, if we pour everything into this guy and we don't get either one, now we're left in a situation where we've seen this at NC State before, and some of the alternative options did not turn out well. So basically that preparation and understanding of, hey, we've got to, you know, game plan this thing out and how do we allocate our resources and all that is having somebody to do that on top of a player evaluator, having those two be two separate people. I don't see a problem with that at all. I think that helps more than hurts.
Yeah, I certainly don't think this will be like having too many cooks in the kitchen. I think this is actually the appropriate amount of cooks to have in the kitchen. And I also think what Wade was saying about not exactly having the most money, but knowing how to use it. That's exactly where this ties in. Having the right people in the right positions to make the right evaluations and then go about your business in that fashion. If he feels comfortable with Andrew Slater and insert assistant GM name here, I'm going to trust him. Again, this is a guy that has success everywhere he goes, and clearly he has a blueprint for what he wants this program to look like in the immediate future. And kind of leads me into my next part of this conversation. He was saying that before he even gets into the portal, he wants to finalize a staff. And so he'll be working on finalizing that here in probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's easy to get caught up when you're seeing these names hit the portal and, you know, people are tweeting the Squidward meme with the sirens going off, Wolfpack. Don't get caught up in some of the names coming out right now. What's most important is that Will Wade builds the infrastructure first. He needs the coaching staff first, because if you can't get that right, everything else is going to be out of whack as well. So I would implore Wolfpack fans to be a little bit patient, because also right now, when the tournament is still going on, you never really see commitments going right now anyway. Most of the commitments and the official visits, that's going to take place in like late April, getting into May. So we got to exercise a little bit more patience. All that stuff is coming down the pipeline, but we got to let Will come into State, establish his blueprint, execute that blueprint, and then the rest will play out after that. So I'm liking what I'm hearing. Obviously, on top of all the confident remarks he made, and I guess the promises, if you want to put it that way, but what NC State will do next year, his grip on how he wants to run this program, I think, is probably the most impressive thing to me. He's not coming here because it was, you know, the first opportunity thrown at him and he wants to get back to the P4 level. He knows exactly how he wants to execute it this time around, back at this level after what happened at LSU. He knows who he wants to hire, when he wants to hire them, and what he wants them to do when they get here. And so that level of organization, it's only going to continue to help out in the long run. So certainly loving what I'm hearing on that front. We'll see what else comes out here publicly with the announcement of a staff here in these next couple weeks. Coming up next, a couple more roster announcements for NC State basketball. You're starting to get a feel of what exactly Will Wade is going to have to pull off this offseason. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Thursday sponsor is Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers, they don't lie. When it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada PRO-4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and every road in between. With room up to 8 people, the Armada PRO-4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada PRO-4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada PRO-4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Last couple minutes of our Thursday show. A couple more roster moves were made for NC State on Wednesday. We saw that Marcus Hill decided to enter the portal. Marcus Hill was a name to keep an eye on here, obviously, as the season was winding down. He said very publicly that he wanted to stay at NC State, and he loved Raleigh, loved the program, loved the city, and he wanted to stay put because he's really enjoyed his time here. But obviously, with the new head coaching changes, and I'm sure he's had conversations with Will Wade, he has decided to enter his name into the portal. So the remaining pieces of this year's roster continue to get ticked off here. Marcus Hill is the latest to leave. Kenton, your thoughts?
I look at this and I say it's the double whammy, right? Whenever a coach leaves, successful or unsuccessful, there will be roster shakeup.
Yeah.
McNeese is going to see roster shakeup. They did great. Best season in school history. They're going to see roster shakeup. Why? The coach left. But you know what else causes a lot of roster turnover? A losing season. And for those of you who don't know, if you've ever watched one of those extreme couponing shows when you stack the coupons on top of each other and the savings mount up, that's what we're seeing here just in the portal edition. When you stack these factors on top of each other, you had a losing season and you're getting a new coach. Look at Louisville last year. And I hate to keep referencing Louisville, but it's the fact. How many players did Louisville retain from last year's team? One, if any?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
So that's my point exactly. You're not going to see a team have one of the worst years in school history. The old coach is gone, and that team retained a good chunk of its roster. I'm sorry to tell you, it's not realistic. In the words of Ayan Levinzant, is that something you want? Well, let me tell you now, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. You're never going to get a season where the team is bad, new coach comes in, and they retain most of their roster. Hell, even look at football. You know, Deion Sanders, I'm bringing my luggage in his Louis. Lincoln Riley, when he went to USC, he didn't say it out loud. He did the exact same thing.
Right. They
had a starting quarterback before Caleb Williams got there. But guess what that guy did? Oh, it's time for me to go get in the portal, y'all. So, you know, I'm not surprised by this at all.
Yeah, like we've been saying these last couple of weeks, the complete revitalization of a roster is pretty much standard practice. And I've kind of come to expect that you shouldn't really expect anyone to come back after, you know, essentially a bad season and you have a coaching change on top of that. So I wasn't expecting to see really any names return. But if you had any beneficial pieces that wanted to stay / the coach wanted to keep them, then that's a bonus. That's why I said at the end of yesterday's episode that what I have heard is that Will Wade has taken the most interest in Paul McNeil and incoming freshman Micah Wilkins in retaining those two, building out the rest of the roster off from there. So Marcus Hill was a dog this year for NC State. And what was a bad year and kind of a lost season, he was one of the lone bright points in the fact that he gave you 1,000% effort every single game. Jump shot didn't work out the best for him. He only shot 20% from three-point land. So we're certainly looking for a more efficient type of guard, but it's not for lack of trying. He gave it his all at all points, and I do appreciate him wanting to stick around in Raleigh even after a bad season. That tells me something about his character. So I think both parties will be better for it in the future, but we wish Marcus the best. And that leads me into the second part of this. Supposedly, this is a, I guess, unconfirmed report, but it seems to be legit. Micah Wilkins has been contacted by Will Wade, and Micah Wilkins is on board with staying in the fold for the NC State Wolfpack. Kenton, what are your thoughts on the Mr. Basketball for the state of North Carolina staying locked in with the Pack?
That doesn't violate a show cause, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good. Well, yeah. Wow. What a shocker. What a shocker that one of the best players in the state wants to stick with a coach that, again, just has a very long history of winning. And I'm not, not for nothing. He wasn't born on third base per se, like some of the other coaches in the conference who are having success right now. He is a guy that has had to get it off the muscle everywhere he has gone. These haven't been places that have been historic powerhouses outside of maybe VCU, and even with VCU, it's a very recent success. However, he was one of the only coaches to win a NCAA tournament game there since Shaka Smart, right? Is he the only one, or has there been?
He is the only coach at VCU to win a tournament game since Shaka Smart. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm so shocked and surprised that the best want to play with the best. That's just kind of how that goes. So I'm excited to see what Zamai can do. And again, it's been a while since we had a really, really elite rim protector around these parts. It's been a while. Last time we got him for 5 minutes, and he was gone. He was gone. Manny Bates, we hardly knew ye, but I'm super excited about Zamika and what he can do here.
For those unfamiliar with Zamika Wilkins, he's a 4-star power forward. He has several big-name offers on his offer list, including Clemson, Illinois, LSU, Miami, Michigan, Oklahoma, Tennessee. They're up there. Texas A&M, Villanova. You get the point. A lot of top-level programs are after his services. For him to stay locked in with NC State after what he saw this year, he saw what happened just like we did, but he also saw Will Wade come into this program and assert himself as the new leader of the pack. For him to want to stay and be a part of that also tells me a lot about Zamika Wilkins, and it's hard not to be excited about Will Wade. I never played basketball past like the 8th grade. I would kill to play for Will Wade, so it's not surprising that the most elite player, so to speak.
Grayson, if Amir Khan doesn't come, they've got a roster spot for you. If Amir Khan does not come, they got a roster. But we don't need you to learn. We don't need you to learn the crab dribble. We don't need you to learn how to bring the ball through low rip. We don't need that. We don't need that, Grayson. Just for Wolfpack Nation's sake, of course.
Not a surprise that perhaps the most elite player within the state of North Carolina is interested in playing for Will Wade. And the tweet that kind of brought all this up, I saw some highlights of him playing against some little white boys that look like me out there, some little high school white boys. And you have Zamika Wilkins, who looks like Godzilla on the court. I mean, obviously, it's not going to look like that at NC State, but you saw his sheer athletic ability just dominating poor little Stevie and Jimmy. Obviously, this is like untapped potential that Will Wade sees in Zamika Wilkins. And so I think that's something to really move with forward here. And if he sees Zamika as a fit into his blueprint and his system and how he wants to run this program as soon as year one, I think that's a home run for all parties involved. That'll do it for us here on Thursday. As always, be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us your thoughts on what the expectations for Will Wade should be in year one. Not just what he said, but what you believe the mark should actually be, which I think is exactly what he said they should be. Also, tell us your thoughts on the other philosophies from Will Wade, the GM, the assistant GM, and how he's looking to build a roster from year in to year out. And also tell us your thoughts on the further roster news. Obviously, I forgot to mention the other high school commit, RJ Greer, has decommitted from NC State. He will reopen his commitment. I should have said that earlier, but so far we have one high school commit. It is Zamika Wilkins, and he is planning to come to NC State. So give us your thoughts on that. And if you have not already, mash that subscribe button. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Friday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.